Can everyone see that? Can someone shout? Yeah?
Yep.
Okay, so welcome to the Hackney Repairs Hub Show and Tell Sprint 2. So about show and tells, so this is the opportunity that we use as part of Agile projects to keep everyone updated on our progress and discoveries, and it provides a good opportunity for feedback, comments, and in these we share what we've been learning, what's coming next, and then once we've finished the presentation, we'll open up for questions and feedback. If there's anyone from housing or the contractors here, we would especially like to hear from you. So our team, we have Lindsay Matthews as the product owner, Barnes Cook as deputy, myself on delivery. Then we have the agency Unbox. So we've got Tom on delivery, and then we've got a design team, which is Boris, Lawrence, and Dawn. We've got Evangelos on development, who just joined us last week. So we're very excited to have him on board. And then we also have 2 Hackney developers now. So Alex was already joined us a while ago, not officially started yet until next week. And then Bookie, who's been working on the platform APIs, he is officially joining us today. So that's also really good news. Over to Lindsay.
So we're currently in the 3rd phase of the Repairs Hub. Phase 1 was where the context of the Repairs Hub was first developed to help with the visibility of complex repairs, and that was mainly used in our Leaks Hub. Phase 2 was then developed to deliver raise and repair functionality, but that was limited to our own in-house DLO team. We're now working on the phase 3, of the extension of the hub to raise and manage contact repairs. And what we ultimately want to do is remove complete reliance on universal housing. So the project goals are to remove dependencies on universal housing for the repairs service, moving the management of contractor repairs to the Repairs Hub, and demonstrating plausible alternatives to legacy systems to internal stakeholders and local government. So to extend the Repairs Hub for contractors, enabling the migration of repairs management from universal housing. So we want the ability to book reactive repairs directly with the contractors, remove all dependency with universal housing, increase visibility on the progress of contractor repairs, and have better partnership working with our contractors, and introduce a standardised approach to people using the hub.
Lawrence, over to you.
Hi, thank you. So I think in the past in the past show and tell, we've talked about this idea of a proof of concept. And so just wanted to take an opportunity to define a little bit more about what that means, and perhaps start the discussion about that. So we've been having kind of these internal discussions about what it is, and so on screen there is a bit of a definition for now. So it's about being able to test feasibility from a technical perspective, that we're able to manage contractor repairs outside of universal housing. So obviously that aligns with the move away from UH, and we want to be specific about reactive contractor repairs rather than different types of contractor repairs. So reactive is when it comes through the RCC and is raised in that manner. So that's the kind of outline of the proof of concept. It won't be writing back to UH, obviously, because that aligns with the move away from UH, and therefore we need to be a little bit mindful about what that means in terms of impacts to other teams and other users of contractor repairs data. So obviously the main users are contractors, but there are other teams and there are other users within Hackney that will be using that contractor data. For example, surveyors will need to be kept up to date with contractor repairs so that they can do inspections, and the RCC will be liaising with contractors to organise appointments. The rents team will be doing the recharging of repairs. Leasehold team and finance will be doing obviously the reconciling of the reports to be able to pay contractors. So there's all these different users of the data that we need to be mindful of, that our new proof of concept can actually continue to do what they need it to do. So that's kind of outline of the proof of concept. Thank you. So in addition, we need to be sort of mindful that it is like an MVP, keep it as MVP as possible. We just want to kind of set out what we think at this stage the proof of concept will kind of encompass and what it won't, to kind of sort of draw a bit of a line in the sand. I think some of these things probably can be discussed and maybe moved from one side to the other. But at this stage, we're kind of saying that we think that this proof of concept will need to obviously interact with Hackney data and a new repairs API that is being built. It will need to obviously write contractor repairs, and we'll be doing that to a new database because we're moving away from using UH as the database. We'll need to allow repairs for all of the SOR codes rather than just a select few. And then we need to store those SOR codes and costs in our database with the correct modeling. We'll need to allow this kind of authorization workflow. So this is, for example, there are different tiers of repair costs, and certain kind of users will be able to authorize the higher costs. So we'll need to be able to allow that workflow to continue to happen. It'll need to have good performance, otherwise that will have knock-on impact on various different things. You know, if the performance is an issue, then contractors might not be encouraged to use it if it's slower than their internal process. It also might mean that folks at the RCC on the phone to residents will have a tougher time, you know, getting access to what they need to. So we need to be mindful of that, and we also need to be aware of the platform APIs that are being worked on and the pipeline that is going ahead with the API pipeline, to make sure that we're not, you know, doing things twice. Utilize what is already being worked on. So that's what we think it will need to include. What we think it won't need to include is something around scheduling. It will at some point need to have something around scheduling, but I think for the proof of concept, just focusing on actually mastering the data in our own database and not worrying about scheduling at this stage. It won't need to integrate with DRS and Servitor. So these are tools that the OLO uses, and that whole system will be used in parallel until the proof of concept is complete. And we won't need a new way to authenticate users. Currently uses Hackney email and Active Directory, and that seems to work sufficiently at this stage. So those are that's the kind of outline for the proof of concept. I think if you've got any questions, we can discuss them at the end, if you'd like to put them in the chat. Otherwise, we can move on.
Sorry, Lawrence, can I just for the benefit of people that may not know what an MVP is.
Sure.
So an MVP is a minimal viable product, and this is a term that we use in agile projects, and it's what is the smallest thing that we can deliver that provides value, and we deliver that small piece of work. We get the feedback from the contractors, from the agents, and then we iterate on that and we improve on that. So that's just what that means for those of you who don't know.
Thanks.
Matt Kay.
Right, so from our first technical workshop, this slide's actually very similar. So anyone saw that before, but we kind of refined it and went back to those goals that Lawrence was talking about, keeping away from UH as much as possible, universal housing as much as possible. So we're still looking at kind of building a new API, and the reason for doing that is that we're getting a bit techie here, but essentially we've got a much nicer way of creating the integration between the repairs hub front end and whatever else needs to go on in the background, whether that's universal housing or whether that's DRS. And we've kind of got a much nicer way of doing that, and we should definitely do that because it makes it more supportable, and then the dev team here can make more changes to it much more rapidly. We're still planning on building a database in AWS. So Amazon's Web Services provides different ways of storing data, and that data should be much more highly available than what we have at the moment with universal housing, where things might go down or systems go down. So that should give us much more stability, and that database hopefully will have a different structure than it does at the moment. Again, that's going quite deep into it, a level of detail I don't really need to know, but it's coming along, it's standardizing it along with the way that other repairs are being done in other organizations. The big change from the first technical workshop and the second one is that this new API will only write to the new database and not into universal housing. It felt like at first that's what we were planning on doing, so we could keep both going at the same time, but it felt like it was a bit of a backward step when one of our main goals is to get away from universal housing. So why not put the effort into actually providing this solution without universal housing being tied to it? It's been pointed out by Boris, actually, this diagram here is actually a little bit misleading. The crosses there are the change from what we had last week. So, the old repairs API is not going to be part of just the contractor repairs process, and universal housing won't be part of the contractor repairs. The previous repairs that were going on through Repairs Hub, for the time being anyway, will still go through the old API and into universal housing, because we're not touching those at the moment. But this is a POC, proof of concept, to see kind of what can we do. As I say, their primary goal is to detach from UH. So let's try and not integrate with it. Let's try and not put anything in there at all. Lawrence spoke about platform APIs. That's a separate project that's going on in the dev team at the moment to provide much easier ways of accessing pockets of information, be that properties, contacts, and we've got cautionary contacts there. These things are being developed at the moment. All of that information is, well, not all of it, but a lot of it is in UH. Some of it comes from elsewhere. But the idea is that if we create these APIs, these integrations with that type of data, if we then decide to shift that data somewhere else, it's much easier for us to change it without a lot of work needing to be done to Repairs Hub in order to consume that data. Which is what the next bullet point was. That was good. There may be other integrations with some on-prem systems. I don't know, maybe finance or whatever. But that's what Lawrence was talking about. The teams that we kind of need to keep in the loop with what this MVP will do.
Thank you, Matt, and over to Dawn.
Thanks, Sarah. Okay, so I'm just going to talk a bit about who we've spoken to in the last sprint. So we've spoken to a couple more contractors, Waits and Hackney Hygiene Services, and we've also spoken to internal leaseholder finance team. Moving forward into the next sprint, we're in the process of setting up interviews with a further 3 contractors. Also would like to speak to housing finance based on what we heard from the leaseholder finance team, and we're speaking to a surveyor administrator tomorrow. But if there is anyone else who's using universal housing or Repairs Hub, any individual or team, and would like to get involved in the research, please do get in touch. It'd be great to speak to you.
Hi, it's me again. So yes, one thing we did in this sprint was have a bit of co-design session to start thinking about some ideas for making this new system and the kind of interface that contractors would use. So we invited 3 contractors back into the session. These are folks that we'd already been speaking to. This time we gave them the opportunity to start drawing or sketching some new ideas for interfaces. So the first half of the session, we talked about the things that we've been finding so far, some of the insights that we've been sharing in these show and tells, and to validate and make sure that we're kind of representing them in the right way and making their voice heard. And then we moved on to sort of things that are holding them back, some of the barriers that they're having with using UH, for example, like not being able to copy and paste stuff and having to manually enter data about repairs into their own kind of internal systems, and how much that was, massive amount of time that was required to do that. And then we started to think about, how might we change or kind of move forward and make those barriers sort of opportunities that we could start to think about solutions for. And so we use these how might we statements that you can see in the top right there. So framing them in a way that we can start to imagine some potential solutions. And then the second half of the workshop, we were all trying to sketch using a bit of software called Miro, which is a sort of collaboration tool, which is really helpful for these kind of workshop type events. And so everyone was trying to change or trying to envisage how the future interface would look like, and how their kind of work tray, for example, would look like. And some of those, or one example of those sketches is in the bottom right there. And so was a really useful session. It was great to kind of get some inspiration, I think, from the contractors about how they might want their workflow to look like, rather than, you know, how it is right now. So the next stage is to take these digital sketches and start making some prototypes that we can then test with contractors again, to see if we're kind of on the right track. So I think that's that slide.
Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about the insight from the interviews the past sprint. Speaking to contractors, it really has helped to validate what we've learnt in the previous couple of sprints. So some of the points that came out, inconsistency of process. We heard about the differences in the way contractors manage the process, but also the way that the contracts have been set up for them. For example, we heard from one contractor that the contract was set up so that they would receive new jobs via email rather than going into their work tray. And they also had a bespoke sort of reporting tool that they use daily that had been set up in business systems, which is very different compared to another contractor who works very much on paper and uses sort of internal spreadsheets to do their own reporting. The experience of using UH, the same sort of feedback, manual, slow, it's poor performance, and the frustrations from that, which is actually affecting how frequently UH notes is updated, and this is obviously having an implication on the visibility of repairs. We heard again about concerns over missing information in sort of job tickets, not being able to get information about where there's asbestos or vulnerable resident info. One contractor said how they really felt that this was the responsibility of the landlord, the responsibility of Hackney, and because they could be liable to their own sort of subcontractors going out to do the work. And finally, the appetite to be able to do more on Hackney's system. Reporting again, but also, for example, being able to upload information, having somewhere there's like a central resource to be able to put information like certification, photos, rather than sending on an email where it gets put into a folder. Being able to actually associate it with the job, the repair, they saw that as very important. Okay, moving on. Okay, and now I'm just going to talk a little bit about the interview that we had with Leaseholder Finance, because it's so different to some of the other interviews that we've had. And also it really illustrated the impact that the way UH has been set up and the process associated with it is having, the impact it's having on how long it takes to bill leaseholders. So in a nutshell, what happens at the moment, the Leaseholder Finance team downloads some data about communal repairs from UH, and they have to do a cleanse because it's not set up in the format they would need to be able to send it to leaseholders. And then because the information has come from UH, it's only estimated, the SOR codes are only estimated. So what they have to do is then send this information over to Housing Finance, who will then match the data with actual costs that they've got to be able to associate the actual costs with the jobs. The information is sent back over to Leaseholder Finance for them to upload it to UH so they can split it out amongst the leaseholders and work out how much each leaseholder takes and must pay. This process takes around 5 months to do. It's very long-winded and it sounded quite painful to go through. Why does it take so long? They do, as I said, they do not have the actual costs in UH, so they're relying on Housing Finance to be able to match that data with the actual jobs. When I talked about the cleanse, it is a process of literally going through line by line every single communal repair to be able to, say, get rid of the information they don't need, but also to look for inaccuracies. For example, the way UH is set up, you could, in theory, raise a drainage job to a boiler. You could raise a job to an estate where it should have been raised to a block, and this has implications on how much the leaseholder, is going to pay in the long run. So it needs to be picked up. Also, we heard about the issue where UH, obviously we know that it can't link different elements of a repair together. So this has a big implication for the Leaseholder Finance team because there is a cap of £250 that a leaseholder can pay for a repair. after that, it must go to consultation. So unless they did this manual process of pulling together all the different elements of a repair, they would not be able to bill the leaseholders correctly. And this obviously could have implications, especially if the leaseholders are noticing this. So yeah, it was definitely worth going through that, and that's why I would finance team to understand their sort of part of that journey. Okay, handing back over to Sarah now.
Can I just pitch in with on that leasehold side of things?
Sure, yeah.
Thanks for that. When me and Lindsay have spoken before about having different fields, so when the original repair is raised, if there are two fields, one field has personal information in it and one field has the actual detail of the repair, then that saves a whole load of issues at actuals, because they can just include the information of the actual repair in the actual bill, because what they have to cleanse is personal numbers and personal details. Yeah,
that's it.
If we got it right at the beginning, when they raised the repair on the hub, then it would save a whole load of things. It takes them 5 months because they've got 5 months, because they have 18 months from the first cost incurred. So they have to issue the bills by September. The last thing is that there must be a way of having updated information on the repairs hub, which, if a job is closed, and then that is the final cost, because it's only an estimate while we don't know when it's finished. If it's finished, that cost is final. So there must be a way of not having this backwards and forwards between finance, which is painful, a way of saying, this is the actual cost. We raised it in May, we finished it in June. The estimate was 200 quid and actually it cost us 150 quid. Yeah. And then lastly, the linking of them. We don't want to, jobs shouldn't be linked because they are individual jobs. What people have done in the past is intentionally raised individual jobs so they don't have to consult, because it isn't over 250. Okay, so we don't want a big job to be raised as lots of individual jobs, because that's getting out of the consultation. And actually, if we do that and we're found out, then we can only charge 250 quid, because this is a responsive repair that if we haven't consulted on, we are capped at 250 quid. So being very dull, I'm quite happy to get involved on this leaseholder point, specifically, if that helps.
Great.
But thanks for that.
Lovely, thank you.
Thanks for your comments. And then finally, just to end, so our next steps will be technical discovery, API analysis, understanding the hacked data standard and the workflow, and then understanding the API pipeline. And as Dawn said, we've got further interviews with the finance team, the rents team, and TMO, the Tenants Management Organisation. We're also going to look to produce the prototypes based on what we did in the workshop, and then recruiting and testing those prototypes with the contractors. We're also going to take a design and development brainstorming session because Evangelos and Bucky are quite new to the project, so it'd be good just to have an idea of everyone's understanding and our next steps. So I am going to stop sharing my screen. Does anybody have any further questions?
Yeah, I've got a question. Just in terms of my first show and tell, so you might have covered this already in other ones that I haven't seen, so apologies if that's the case. In terms of the jobs that my team does, which are the more complex repairs, not just with external contractors, but with the DLO as well, we obviously still have the issue of not being able to raise multiple SOR code jobs. Is that something that's going to be done for both the DLO and the external contractors within this project? And also, one of the other important things for us as well is being able to save the documentation and pictures against the job orders. Obviously, at the moment, we do that via universal housing. But if we're going to be moving away from that, it's obviously a key bit of functionality that we would need within the repairs hub, because a lot of the stuff that we do, we need to collate evidence in case it escalated into a legal disrepair case or a complaint. So are they things that are going to be covered under this phase of the project?
I'll take that question. Yeah, absolutely, Grant. So what happened was, originally the scope of this project was literally just to put contractor repairs onto the hub.
Yeah.
The scope then changed, because obviously we've got that 18-month deadline to move away from universal housing. So as part of that, we've developed a must-have list. And that must-have list contains everything that we need to remove all dependency on universal housing. And both of those things that you've just mentioned are on that list. So yes, in answer to your question, that forms part of the scope of this works.
Just to clarify, we can already do multiple SOR codes on the hub. That's already a thing. That's already
the DLO, yeah.
Just for the DLO. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
And with I'm going forward, it might not be part of this project as well, but are we still looking at, I know we talked about it during the first MVP with the Leaks Hub, about getting like the planned asset management information and warranty information, like eventually moving away from UH. Is that still the plan, to get all of that on the repairs hub to cut out some of the issues that we all have?
Yeah, that's not currently part of our must-have list and doesn't form the scope of this project, but that will be included. We do have that, and it is planned on further phases.
Cool, brilliant, thank you.
I also wanted to add that we need to be a bit careful about over-expecting how much we can achieve within the current budget that's been assigned to the project, right? So I think currently we really need to focus on that proof of concept that we're talking about, which really just demonstrates that we can take a job end-to-end for reactive contractor repairs. And that we can take that away from UH, right? But all the other stuff that's currently implemented already, right? So all the DLO stuff and the properties, database and all that stuff. Whether we can move away from that within this particular budget, we'll see. Like that, there might need to be some kind of extension as well. So we need to keep that in mind.
Sarah, I've got a quick question.
Hi.
Hi, my name's Philippa, for those who don't know me, and I work in the delivery team at Hackett. Sarah and team, thinking about your work in the next 2 weeks, what do you need from this group of people? So the people that have come to your show and tell today, what would be really valuable that this group of people could do to help you in the next sprint?
I think it would be interesting if there are any gaps in our show and tell, potentially if we've missed any key people or obviously we haven't talked about our user stories, but if there are any parts of that workflow that we kind of haven't identified yet, that would be really useful.
Yeah, I echo that sort of engagement, and obviously it'd be great to have as many people that show and tells, and the whole point of that is to make sure that we're not missing any people that should be involved, and that we don't have any gaps in the service. So yeah, I guess one thing that everyone could do is just mention it to the people they work with, and see if they'd like to or would find value in coming to the show and tells.
And actually feedback on the show and tell as well. I'm aware that some of it might seem quite technical if you're working in housing, and you probably won't know what an API is. So just any feedback, any improvements that we can make to these sessions to kind of make them more accessible would be really appreciated as well.
Brilliant. Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you. And I'll leave you all be, because it's probably lunchtime for everyone. Please drop me a line if you've got any further questions. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.